Good morning, afternoon, evening, 4 a.m., whatever time it is for you watching, good that to you everyone. So as many of you may know, a couple of months ago, Hopo Games released a roadmap for Risk of Rain 2's 2021, detailing the things that will be released and what will be going on with the game in the future. In this roadmap was a very interesting piece of news, the announcement of a paid DLC expansion, slated for Q4 of 2021. This was definitely some pretty big news, as this marks the first and as of now only paid DLC expansion Risk of Rain 2 has gotten. The details on the expansion itself were understandably pretty vague, seeing as it was posted so early on before the actual release, but we did get some specifics. We know for sure that the DLC will have new everything. This was one of the things that really got me interested about the DLC, the fact that there is just so much content. New enemies, new bosses, new stages, new item tiers, alternate final stages and bosses, there's so much stuff. In fact, we even get an estimate of the scope of the DLC in the roadmap, which states that the expansion pass will be roughly the size of 2 to 3 content updates. That's a lot of stuff. Just imagine like 3 anniversary updates all clumped together into one giant DLC explosion. So obviously, this DLC is going to be huge, like really huge, which is definitely understandable since this will be paid DLC, and to convince players to buy an expansion to the already amazing Risk of Rain 2, the DLC has got to have some pretty good stuff in it. So far, we know very little about what captivating things will actually be in the DLC, just that there will be a lot of new additions and reworkings. So I thought this was a good opportunity to dust off my old crystal ball and attempt to predict what exactly will be in the new Risk of Rain 2 DLC. Because why not? Unfortunately, I have to admit that I am not a certified fortune teller yet, and so I'm going to say up front that I am most definitely going to get some of these predictions wrong, and most definitely going to leave some stuff out. So when I inevitably get some of this stuff wrong, please don't... You know what? Who am I kidding? I'm still gonna get roasted on in the comments, regardless of what I say up front, so just do whatever you want. Just know that I'm trying my best here. And leave the fro insults out of this, okay? Also, I'm not going to mention the things that we already know for sure, like just blatantly stating that there will be new stages and new items, as that's just superfluous. Rather, I'm going to discuss topics that aren't explicitly said anywhere in the roadmap, hence the predictions part. I'm also not going to go into very specific specifics, like specific stat reductions and balancing on certain survivors and minor bug fixes and things like that. There are most likely going to be so many of those that I could make several hours of video just from that alone, so I'm not touching it. And with this overly long introduction out of the way, let's get into the predictions. First, I'll start with a larger scope prediction. I think that this paid DLC and the DLCs after it will each have some sort of theme. For instance, perhaps a retro theme where a lot of content from the original Risk of Rain is put into the paid DLC, or perhaps a mechanical theme with emphasis revolving around the mysterious technologies of the Risk of Rain universe. Basically, I think that each paid DLC will have a center of focus on one specific theme and add content that revolves around it. That doesn't mean that all of the content added will exclusively be about that theme, rather that a majority of the new content added will be in line with whatever theme the DLC is about. This makes sense for Hopo Games to do, as adding a theme to each DLC can really freshen up the game and make all the new content added seem more interesting. When new content is given a theme, it inherently makes it seem more intriguing, since making content centered around a theme gives the devs a chance to get creative and experiment with the content. A technology theme with a new mysterious ship suddenly appearing that reshapes entire maps with new landscapes. A space theme with a planet collision that results in a wave of new enemies flooding into the environments. Utilizing themes opens a lot of doors for creativity's sake, and the themes can be about anything the dev team wants, whatever seems the most interesting. They could be tied to the Risk of Rain universe, or maybe tied to the real world, perhaps with seasonal themed DLC. Plenty of other games tend to have themed DLC, and themed DLC has so much creative potential that it only makes sense for Risk of Rain 2 DLC to follow suit. The next prediction I have actually doesn't pertain to any changes made to the game itself. I think that the Risk of Rain 2 DLC will release simultaneously on PC and consoles. Okay, I'll admit that this one might not be the most prediction-y prediction. I've heard rumors about the fact that it will be released on both PC and console at the same time, but I couldn't find anything from Hopo Games to confirm it, so I'm throwing this in as a prediction. The PC and console update schedules have been a hot topic of debate for a long time. Plenty of people have shown their annoyance with the delayed updates for console, especially with the anniversary update. Console players still don't have the anniversary update at the time of this recording, and according to Hopo Games, it won't be released until someday in June, most likely in the latter half of the month. This delay in updates for console has gone on for as long as Risk of Rain 2 has been out. PC first, console at some point later. So with that in mind, I think that the DLC will be released on console and PC platforms at the same time. Hopo Games has to have seen that console players are kinda mad that they are sitting in the shadow of PC. There's been so much racket about it that there is no way that they don't know about it. So it would only make sense that they release the DLC for console players at the same time as PC players to avoid feeding even more fuel fuel to the ever-growing fire of annoyance. I don't really think that Hobo Games can afford much more outrage over this, and releasing this huge DLC for PC would be a major point of contention. At least the other updates that came to PC first were relatively minimal, aside from the anniversary update, but this DLC is massive and will provide a ton of content, and not releasing it for console at the same time as PC will garner a massive reaction. I do understand that Hobo Games has limited control over their console ports, but I think that they have scheduled the DLC in a way that gives them time to have the DLC ready for both PC and console, seeing as it won't be coming out until Q4 of this year. So I'm pretty sure that Hobo Games will release the DLC on PC and console at the same time. Now to move on to some more specific predictions. I predict that the Risk of Rain 2 DLC will contain at least one returning survivor from the original Risk of Rain and at least one brand new survivor at the minimum. We know for sure that we are getting multiple new survivors thanks to the roadmap, and so I predict that there will be at least one returning survivor from Risk of Rain and at least one additional new survivor. We fans are always clamoring to have some of the OG survivors from Risk of Rain put into Risk of Rain 2, and so far Hobo Games has agreed and done so with survivors like Acrid, so it only makes sense that they would use this giant opportunity to put in more Risk of Rain survivors. I'm not certain if they will add one or two, but they won't add more than two for sure, only because I think that they want to ration the survivors out some and slowly give them to us in a trickle to keep the hype for more Risk of Rain survivor ports alive. There are only so many characters to port into Risk of Rain 2 from Risk of Rain, so they probably are going to ration them out. So I predict we can expect one for sure and maybe two new OG Risk of Rain survivors. And of course, I also predict that they will be putting in at least one brand new survivor. To make the DLC more appealing, of course they're going to throw in a brand spanking new survivor. It only makes sense. This is the golden opportunity to do so, as they can be creative and formulate the survivors around whatever theme the DLC will be on. And I think that there is a higher chance that there will be more than one new survivor, as there is no limit to how many they can add, so they don't have to ration them like the original Risk of Rain survivor ports. We'll have to see exactly how many when the new DLC comes, but in total I'm predicting one new OG Risk of Rain survivor and two brand new survivors. Don't quote me on that though. Next, a relatively quick prediction. I predict that the DLC will include additions to the survivors' abilities. I'm actually pretty surprised this wasn't on the list on the roadmap, as it seems like a thing that will most definitely be added in the DLC. New survivor abilities are a great way to bring interest back to the already existing cast of Risk of Rain 2, as it makes new content from the already enjoyable content. I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be put in, as it's not super time consuming and would be a great way to get more content in for the players. This is definitely my most confident prediction, even if it's a little obvious, so you may quote me on this one. And finally, my last prediction for the Risk of Rain 2 DLC is that it will not have very many quality of life changes. I know, that sounds ridiculous, but let me explain. Imagine you have a game, and when you open the menu of said game, you have to press the arrow keys on your keyboard repeatedly to scroll through the menu. And it's a long menu, meaning that you have to press the arrow keys over and over and over just to get around the menu. Then, a paid DLC comes out that adds a lot of new features to the game, and adds the option to scroll through the menu by holding down the arrow keys. Now it's super easy to navigate the menu, if you bought the DLC. If you didn't, too bad, you still have the arrow problem. That's not fair, is it? That's such an annoying, not even gameplay related problem with a quick fix that you can't enjoy because you did not buy the DLC. This is exactly what I mean by the DLC not having quality of life changes. They should be available to everyone, and I predict that Hobo Games will not restrict them. Now I know, this seems like such an obvious prediction, but it is something that could possibly not be done. There have been plenty of instances that DLC and other reputable games have, whether inadvertently or not, made quality of life changes that were not available to everyone. Knowing this, it is crucial that Risk of Rain 2 does not follow suit, and I think that Hobo Games understands that. Most likely, they will have some changes made in the time up to the release of the DLC, and then release the quality of life changes separately from the DLC in a follow-up bug fix update. And as an additional point to that, which connects to my earlier prediction about the simultaneous release of the DLC on PC and console, any quality of life changes they make with the DLC will also be released on both PC and console at the same time. It would be so annoying to not have simple quality of life changes on console when PC has them. We already have that problem right now at the time of this recording, as the anniversary update added a lot of quality of life changes that we console players still don't have. So knowing that Hobo Games most likely knows this, I predict that along with the DLC not having any quality of life changes, the quality of life changes that come after it will be simultaneously released on both PC and console. And that wraps up my predictions. I'm probably missing out on a lot of potential stuff, but for the sake of time, I just wanted to talk about all the predictions that made the most sense and were the most prominent to me. I have absolutely no idea if any of this is right, so by all means, you may rewatch this video in a few months and laugh at my mistakes. And if you're already watching this after the release of the DLC, you may also laugh at my mistakes. But speaking of you, what do you all think about the DLC? What content do you think the DLC will have? I most definitely did not cover it all, so I would love to hear your theories in the comments below. And no cheating by quote-unquote predicting the DLC in the comments after the DLC came out. That's right, I see those post dates. I can't do anything about it if you do, but, you know, no cheating. What's the rule? Like, you can't spoil movies until like a month after they release. Is that the rule? I mean, I guess it doesn't matter here since it's DLC and it'll be promoted a ton anyway. So whatever. Fine, do what you want. The algorithm likes comments anyways. But don't cheat, kids. That's bad. Where am I even going with this?